Thanks, gang. So appreciate you guys having me here. And as I understand it, you may not have heard, but I guess since we're speaking about conservative issues, we're going to be kicked out of here at 7 o'clock. So I'm going to condense this as quickly as I can. That way it gives us a chance to maybe ask questions, or but regardless, you know, wherever this crowd goes, I'll go. So even if we have to get kicked out, dragging and screaming, then I'll be outside if you guys want to ask any other questions. So. Topic for tonight, illegal immigration. So clearly a huge issue that we're facing right now. I don't think anybody in this room disagrees. How I got involved in it, and I'll just kind of go from the very beginning. The day that I graduated from West Point, I swore an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And that means a great deal to me. It is the oath that I took. It's the same oath that all of our elected officials take, including members of Congress, all the way up from your elected official, dog catcher, all the way up to the President of the United States. You have sworn that oath. That means a lot to me, and it should mean a lot to everybody. And I know we have at least one veteran in here. Any other veterans in the room? Yeah? So as you guys probably remember, when you're serving, you're pretty much encouraged to be nonpartisan, because the President of the United States is also a politician. So, at least for me, I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to politics while I was there. Once I got out, it was like having a veil lifted from my eyes, and I could start to see the political field a little bit more clearly, a little bit more objectively. And at that time, I had small children. And the first thing that occurred to me, politically at least, that I thought that was affecting my family and would continue if it didn't stop, was the illegal alien invasion. It affects just about every facet of our life. So just for fun, why don't we just start throwing out some things. Who would like to describe one area of our life that the illegal alien invasion affects? What's the biggest one that comes to mind? Anybody?
Jobs.
Jobs, okay. Yeah, so we have people that are coming to our country illegally and are working here that would potentially displace an American citizen or somebody who's legally here to work a job, right? And we can get into, there's a lot of facets of that. When somebody is here illegally, they are generally paid a lower wage because the employer doesn't have to pay some of the, if they'll pay them under the table, then they're not paying some of the extra taxes and so forth. Sometimes they can get away with it because they're bringing them false documents, but that's not always the case. And so what happens is, because the employers are paying a lower wage, that means that it's depressing the wages for other workers who are in that same industry. So you'll hear a lot, and you have, since I started doing this in 2004, I think it was George Bush that originally started saying that they're doing the jobs that Americans won't do. We hear that a lot. The truth of the matter is, they are doing the jobs that Americans won't do for the artificially depressed wages that the employers are now able to pay because they're used to having the illegal labor. So that's the truth of the matter. So jobs is definitely one of them. What else? What other areas of our life does it affect?
I think it's mostly national security issues.
National security. So obviously all of us remember or have learned about the events of 9/11. The folks that came across here, some of them did it legally. Had they been properly vetted, perhaps, or pursued, perhaps that would have happened. We also have, in 2005, there was a study released. It was actually commissioned by Congressman Mike McCall here in Texas. It was called "A Line in the Sand, Confronting the Threat at the Southwest Border." And in that report, if any of you have a chance to look it up and can find it, I've got a copy of it. I'd be happy to send it to you. It's just chock full of information about the dangers of this threat. One of the things, to your point, is that as far back as then, they have been identifying pieces of clothing that are being discarded. Some of them are like jackets with patches on there, showing planes flying into buildings. They're Hezbollah patches, all sorts of terroristic and Islamic terrorist organizations that are leaving behind some of these materials as they're crossing the border. It's a reality. And to be fair, again, to your point, if you're in the middle of between ports of entry, and you have the capability, because there's no one watching that, or there's no physical barrier, that you can drive a truck across the border without being spotted and bringing a load of whatever, or an individual can come across carrying who knows what because they know they're not going to be apprehended, or at least they have a very good chance not to be. What's in that truck? What's in the backpack that the person's carrying? We have video that we've seen of people just coming across the border with backpacks. Now, presumably it's probably drugs, but does it have to be? That's not something that we can just say, oh, well, so far it hasn't happened. You know, they haven't brought in a dirty bomb or anything like that. So, national security is another one. What else?
Voter fraud?
Voter fraud, election integrity. So we know in this state that there has been cases prosecuted for voter fraud. We also know that many of those have not, I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, many of those are people who are not legally authorized to be in this country. It's just a fact. What else?
Drugs.
Drugs, yeah. So clearly the biggest avenue for drug smugglers coming across the border, that gets into our health issues, right? I mean, we've got tons of people who are facing serious consequences for the opioid crisis. So that's another one, right? So what about things like just mundane things? Traffic, more of them on the road, illegal aliens on the road, traffic, that's annoyance, right? We already talked about jobs. So just about another one?
Education.
Education, right? So, and that gets into, and you can see that all of these are spider webbing too, right? They're all connected to each other. The education, so we're supposedly mandated to educate illegal alien children, you know, obviously whether they're here or not legally. Who's paying for that? We're paying for it, right? And that's not the only thing. So medical costs, healthcare, because of a federal regulation, a law called EMTALA, we are required to treat and stabilize anybody that comes into a hospital in the United States. And that cost, again, comes out of our pockets for public hospitals, right? All of these things were thoughts that were going through my head as I thought about my kids growing up and having to face the consequences of those of having a border that is wide open and laws that are not enforced. So, 2004, I got tired. I started looking around. Okay, so just coming fairly new out of the military, that's what we have elected officials for. So I just sort of started to wait. Somebody's going to do something about that. I kept waiting. Didn't happen. Finally, I fed up. I found some like-minded individuals. I started what back then was called the Fire Coalition. What today is now, we've changed it to the Patriot Coalition. And we started focusing on projects that everyday citizens could become a part of. One of the ones that basically catapulted us into the news and kind of spread the word across the country was a project called WeHireAliens.com. And it addressed, who said jobs? Jobs, yeah. And it addressed the employers who were hiring illegal aliens. It was extremely frustrating. The regular everyday person, that's probably one of the things that they run into the most, depending on the cycle of immigration, of illegal immigration. If you're in a trade that is now dominated by illegal aliens, not only are your wages depressed and the jobs sometimes aren't available, but now what are you going to do to support your family? Can you imagine how frustrating that would be? I mean, I know a lot of people who have been in that situation, construction or landscaping, all sorts of trades like that. So what we did, we said, okay, no one is enforcing, by no one I mean our federal government, was not really enforcing the laws, and we do have laws that are intended to go after the employers of illegal aliens. Wasn't happening. So what we did is we put up a website. It was the first of its kind, and basically what it did is it outed anybody who, any employer who was hiring illegal aliens. And the way that we did it was we just offered them, hey, submit your evidence, tell us how you know or why you have reasonable suspicion to believe that an employer is hiring illegal aliens. And the people just started flooding the site. It's not like it was rocket science, not like it was unknown. We would get operations managers, operations directors from companies. We'd have HR managers. We would have former board members who would be sending in information about how they knew. Oh yeah, they came in to me one day, they gave me their bogus identification, their bogus social security number, had all 9s on it. We submitted it. We submitted to the government. They said, no, he can't work there. We let him go. 3 days later, he came back with another set of documents. So we'd get stories like this. And pretty soon, some of the employers were getting pretty ticked at us, right? Because now it was visible. Now the public knew. It wasn't just a sweep it under the rug situation. What turned out is ICE started busting some of these places. Now, they would never acknowledge that it was because of us that these companies were busted. But I do know for a fact that probably half a dozen companies that were on our site later were busted by ICE. Something, IFCO raids, probably some of you are a little younger to remember some of the last raids that were happening. But that's a project that we started. And so it's just things like that, maintaining visibility on the problem. So worked on that for, 15 years has now been that now we call it the Patriot Coalition. Now I'm going to skip a few things just because of the interest of time and we've got to get out of here. But here's where we're at. I do call it an illegal alien invasion. And it's not a very popular term. It's not a very politically correct term. They are illegal aliens as defined in the United States Code. They are aliens because they are not of this country. It is an invasion. What is an invasion? Let's set aside the numbers for a second, because does anybody here believe that the sheer number of illegal aliens that come here to this country wouldn't warrant the term invasion? Millions and millions. Larger than any invasion that our military has been involved in, I'll tell you that, over the course of time. So let's set aside the numbers for a second and talk about what is an invasion. Invasion is when any foreign national, any group of foreign nationals comes to our country or a country without authorization in order to pursue and to gain access, whether it's through stealing, taking advantage of, or just taking our resources. Right? I mean, that's basically why people invade a country. So based on the numbers and the object of why they're coming here, I consider that an illegal alien invasion. It's not anything to be ashamed of, because if we're not going to name the problem, how are we going to start to solve it? Especially considering the urgency of what we're facing right now. It is an urgent issue. And so if we are not able to name it in an urgent fashion, we're not going to get the attention it deserves. So, besides the fact that I consider it's an invasion because it's a slow motion, it is a semi-organized and a quasi-armed invasion. I mean, all those elements have to do with the people who are coming here. It's just over a course of time. So it's not a traditional invasion that we would know of. So, we know the problems. We know how pervasive it is. We know the negative effects it can have and has had. And there's a lot more. So how do we solve it? What do we do about it? Well, over the course of the last 15 years, after studying it for so long and understanding the root cause, and there's one other thing that we should probably address. Who are our constitutional scholars in here? Anybody know what Article 4, Section 4 says? I'll give you a reminder. The Article 4, Section 4 guarantees the state's protection from invasion. So we just talked about it is an illegal alien invasion. We should be protected from that by our federal government. And that's what... How are we doing on time?
About 10 minutes.
Okay. He's going to notice. Okay, so our federal government is required to protect us from invasion, and that is why we should be able to use the resources, ICE, Border Patrol, in order to protect us from the invasion we just talked about. Okay, so the solutions for this? Number one, first and foremost, do we need anything we need to know about?
And he wants us out by 7, rather than leaving by 7.
Okay, so I'm going to have to run through these. The first thing we need to do to solve the problem is we need a physical barrier that is defended. Nothing can work without a physical barrier, and here's why. Whatever enforcement actions we take, as long as as people want to come here, whether it's because we're a beacon of freedom or because they want our resources, our jobs, or whatever, unless we have a physical barrier that is defended, all we have is a revolving door at the border. So it's like trying to dig out, bail out water from a boat that still has holes in it, right? We've got to plug the holes. Okay, that's number one. Number two, we have to go after the employers with a vengeance, the employers of illegal aliens. You know, we've had a couple busts recently that are big busts in big areas, or lots of employees. We have to go after small mom and pop operations in rural areas. We have to go after small operations in big urban areas. We have to go after small, big operations in rural areas. No employer that's hiring illegal aliens can think that they are beneath the radar. Because as soon as they have the fear of God in them, that somebody might be swooping in and arresting them, and by the way, they are also susceptible to prison time, not just fines. It's $10,000 per employee and time served, or it can be. So we need to start implementing some of those punishments on the employers of illegal aliens. And as soon as they have that fear of God, they will think twice about hiring. And as soon as that magnet is shut off, because it is a magnet, that is what draws most of the illegal aliens here that are coming, that aren't just coming to commit crimes and be a part of a gang. Shut that off, they'll have to think twice about making that very arduous trip up here, putting their lives at risk, and not getting a job and still having no money to show for it. Okay? So that's number two. That can help self-deport, is what we call it. So if people are here and they are no longer able to find jobs because the employers are not willing to hire them, they're like, why am I going to be away from my family? I'm going to go back to my family. And they'll self-deport. That'll help us not have to do the enforcement actions. Number three, until the asylum problem this year, 40% of all the illegal aliens in the country were here because they overstayed a visa. That means people here on work visas, people here on education visas, tourist visas, whatever it happens to be. We have to throw way more money at that, because no one that just decides to dissolve into society because no one's paying attention to them, we can't allow them to think that they are beneath the law as well. We have to go after them individually to make sure that they understand that it's not okay just to absorb into our society. And that's going to take more money. And that's something that Congress has to do, is to throw more money at it. I would submit to you that rather than sending money to their countries to try to fix the problems that we believe, or some consortium believes is the problem, that we use the money here to make sure that we control what's in our purview. We cannot be a sovereign nation without borders that we are enforcing and the laws that we're enforcing. Okay, so we have to go after those overstays, and they're making a little more effort because they're coming up with biometric devices that can track people as they're exiting and entering the country. But we need to throw more money at that. The enforcement is key. Number four, we need to ensure that we are denying denying sanctuary to illegal aliens. This encompasses a lot. One is, they can't just think that they're safe from enforcement, just everyday enforcement, even not along the border, but in the interior of the country. They have to know that somebody will be coming after them. Okay? They can't just think that, oh, I'm in a sanctuary city, or I'm in a sanctuary county, or I'm in a sanctuary state. The people who are offering sanctuary are criminals as well. And I will say it again. I was given a presentation similar to this last night. Somebody said, well, what about the governors who are offering sanctuary, like Gavin Newsom? Lock them up. And here's why. Title 8, United States Code, Section 1324, provides us the means to prosecute anybody who is aiding and abetting somebody who is in this country illegally, and it provides for jail time. How can we say that we are a constitutional republic and are pursuing liberty if we are just ignoring the laws that we have on the books simply because it's inconvenient? Simply because it's politically incorrect, or because somebody might be scared, or we might cause somebody undue hardship. I'm sorry, they made those choices when they came here. So, the people who, including governors all the way on down, who are offering benefits or enabling benefits to illegal aliens, they are just as guilty of committing a crime as the person who's here, because they're aiding and abetting in that. Why should they have any more immunity from the prosecution of laws than any of us if we were to entice somebody to stay here? Because that's what they're doing. When they're giving benefits to illegal aliens, they are enticing them to stay. They are making it easier for those people to be here. Okay? So, we have to deny sanctuary, and that means getting tough with 8 U.S.C. 1324, those aiding and abetting laws. And lastly, and this didn't just come up until recently, is the asylum issue. Clearly the word is out. Clearly they know that come here and you claim asylum, you get some sort of preferential treatment. We don't actually, yes, we need to fix some laws in Congress. But even today, there are at least 3 things that we can be doing that the President and his Attorney General have in their power to fix this today. One is they can push forward the interview process that the Customs and Border Patrol officers have when they interview somebody who's here for asylum. In that process, they determine if they have a reasonable, what am I trying to say? Credible fear of being here in this country, right? Right now, they bring them into an area and they do all the interviews in one place. If you were to push that to the border, they could make a determination right there and turn somebody away and not have to let them in order to go through that process. That is the process. That can be done today. And I believe I've heard talk of them trying to do that. It's going to require training of more agents in the field. A second thing they can do is the Attorney General has within his power to determine and declare what is considered a serious crime. You see, if a potential asylee, a claimant, comes here and asks for asylum, when we determine, one of the things that we do is we say, hey, has this person committed a serious crime? The Attorney General has within his power, through regulation, to determine what a serious crime is. He can declare that coming through a foreign country, being illegally present in a foreign country, is a serious crime. So somebody who comes through Mexico illegally, without authorization, that's a serious crime. And that could be a means to deter that person and deny their claim. The third thing we can do, and I'll wrap up here. Third thing they can do is they can change the criteria by what they say is a credible fear in their country. The Attorney General has within his power, again, through regulation, the ability to say, if somebody wanders through an entire other country before they get here, that they no longer have a credible fear of prosecution. Because they're already outside of their country, they're in another country. The Attorney General today can make that determination, and that can be a means to deny somebody asylum as well. So, 5 things that we should be doing and can be doing if we will have people that have the intestinal fortitude to actually implement them, right? And that's the key. Well, we need to send people to Congress, to the White House, to all levels of government who are willing to work together to get on the same page and say, yes, these things are common sense. There's something that everybody cares about. There's something that everybody believes ought to be happening, but no one is doing it. So I'll cut it off there because I know we're running short on time. But I'd be happy to, even if we're kicked out of here, I'll be happy to stick around and talk to everybody if you have questions, anything like that. Okay?
Thank you very
Thanks.
much. Thank you guys for coming.